So for any speaker, it's more difficult than perhaps even to fight a war. So I'll try to keep it short. Probably tomorrow there will be another session. I'll try to elaborate more in that one. Fundamentally, a lot of people might think, why should I get interested in international affairs, G20, something is happening globally. I must first of all congratulate Professor Manish for a wonderful presentation. And you echoed a lot of things that I would have otherwise thought of speaking. So I would try to cut short that. Wonderful presentation. So for the youth, you need to first understand why you should think about it. In a globalized environment, today it has become very easy to get access to technology. Something wonderful being created in the United States, you get access to that. Something happening anywhere in the world, you get access to that. But globalization is not just about benefits. Globalization comes with crisis as well. So today, you cannot think that I don't care what happens in the world, I would just live my way. Why? Now think about it. We are all so much excited about artificial intelligence. Everyone talks about artificial intelligence. Tomorrow when AI would come in full flow, you would not be needed for any job. You would not be needed as an employee anywhere. You will not be needed as a worker. You won't even be needed as a teacher, perhaps even a writer, because the AI will do a better job. Look at what ChatGPT is doing right now. So how would you make yourself relevant in that kind of an environment where the technology will do something better than you? How would you evolve yourself? Similarly, in a globalized environment where international flights are happening all the time, if you just look at that kind of a map where how many planes are flying at any point of time, it's like more crowded than any city, road on Delhi. So the COVID actually happened because flights went from one place to another. So in a globalized environment, you are no more secure, immune from anything, from any kind of crisis. And that's why for the future, for the kind of disruptive future that is coming in the next 2 decades, when you would be the policymaker, when you would be leading your family, when you would be leading organizations, when you will be perhaps policymaker for the country, the world is going to be far more complex than what it is today, or what it was 20, 30 years back. And the only thing perhaps that would be constant at that point of time would be change, constant change. And how would you evolve, adjust yourself to that kind of change is the biggest challenge. And that's why it's very important to understand what is happening in the world today and how it impacts us and how should we be prepared. So when we talk about G20, it is not just about one event, global event happening where India has the presidency today, but India is trying to change the narrative. Please understand, from 1945 or 1947 onwards when we got independence, we have constantly been told by the West that they know better than us for everything. They will tell us what is good for us. They will tell us don't use coal. They will tell us, oh, this is not good, that is good. With all due respect, there will be professors in American universities who will tell us, you should do this, you should do that. For how long? For how long the West will dictate terms? And why is it that G20 today is so very important? G20, first of all, consists of countries which control 80% of global product that is produced in a year, 75% of global trade, 2/3 of world's population, 60% of world's land. And it is important because the institutions that were created after 1945, which Professor Manish also mentioned, are not working. United Nations, is it working? Like tomorrow, many of you might get excited to get a job in United Nations and go there. But ask yourself, what was the role of United Nations when COVID struck, or institutions associated with United Nations, such as World Health Organization? What is the role of United Nations today when a war between Russia and Ukraine is happening? What are they doing? Are they not supposed to prevent wars? What was the role of United Nations when Turkey was struck with an earthquake? Which country went first? India, not United Nations. The West, which dictates terms to the whole world, that we know best what is to be done, did not have time to spend money on Turkey. You know why? Because they were busy funding the Ukraine war. Okay? So there was a war. First of all, there was this COVID crisis, which again it was said. We still don't know where it came from. And you know one thing? From 2015 onwards, there were articles which were coming out that a major virus is going to emerge. They were creating a chimera in a laboratory. They were merging different viruses together to create something called a chimera, which will be very difficult to manage. So 7 to 8 years before it happened, people knew it is coming. What were the global institutions doing? Nothing. Why? Because there are institutions, there are organizations which benefit if there are pandemics. Otherwise, how would organizations run by selling medicines? How would organizations benefit if there are no war? So when Prime Minister Mody mentioned that G20, the theme, as we are working and talking about it everywhere, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one world, one family, one future. Is the world really one family? Perhaps not. Perhaps not. Why? When Prime Minister mentioned that this is not an era of war, he said it in front of the Russian president, but he did not mention it only for Russia. He mentioned it for everybody, for many Western companies and Western countries which survive on war economy. You know, there are countries in the world which will not survive, which will not profit, which will not flourish if there are no wars in the world. So the war, and then they would have the media to justify that this is the reason the war was good, because we fought for your freedom, because we fought for your democracy. You know, the Iraq war happened last year, two decades back. 9/11 terror attack had nothing to do with Iraq. Iraq was devastated by saying, oh, they have weapons of mass destruction, which till date have not been found. But you cannot blame United States for genocide because they fight for freedom. So the media says. Okay? And in Afghanistan, they did something very interesting. There's a joke. In Afghanistan, it is said that in 2 decades, they spent $2 trillion, 20 years, $2 trillion, numerous presidents, killed thousands of people to replace Taliban with Taliban. And this is happening. This is happening. When the whole world was suffering because of COVID, first there were lobbies from other countries and some within the country also who had told, India will be gone. 25 crore people would have COVID, the country will be doomed, there will be no economy. And suddenly, you wonder what happened? After the COVID crisis started moving away, India emerged as the 5th largest economy of the world when many other countries were collapsing, and today United States also have a huge banking crisis. When many thought that India has no option but to buy medicines and vaccines from abroad, we made vaccines on our own, and we not only gave that vaccine free of cost, administered more than 200 crore vaccines, and the vaccines which worked, unlike our eastern neighbor. But at the same time, we gave free additional ration to 80 crore people so that nobody dies of starvation during that COVID time. United States could not do it. The Western countries which tell us all the time, you must improve, could not do it. And let me tell you one thing, whatever the Western countries do, we have to do it 6 to 7 times more because of our population. What they do, we have to do 7 times more. And in spite of being a democracy, where we don't actually tell people to do things by putting a gun on their shoulder, on their head, people followed, in most times, not always, the COVID protocols. So the West says, please follow us, we are the best in the world. You should know what democracy is, you should know what development is. And interestingly, some of the Western countries, again, I have to name, sorry, but United States. And I'm not against United States, I'm just saying certain things which are facts, you can check it. Every other day you see what? Some 20-year-old maverick, mad guy, took an assault rifle, went to a college and a university, shot down 20-odd students. But you cannot ban weapons in the United States because there are lobbies. The United States president is helpless. So in a country which is the richest country in the world, which says we are the biggest biggest hub for all opportunities, you see every other day kids getting killed because some mad guy got hold of a military-grade assault rifle and shooting down people. But don't talk about mental health. Today, when we talk about health, you know the biggest problem the world faces today? Suicides. Nobody wants to talk about mental health. Nobody wants to talk about your traditional lifestyle to improve your inherent immunity. India survived because of our inherent immunity, not just the vaccines. You remember during the COVID time when we all were forced to take the kara, you know? The West was saying, oh, what was that? Oh my God, it's so unscientific. Today, World Health Organization has been compelled, mind mark by word, to open a center for traditional medicine in Gujarat. They are now acknowledging that traditional medicines make a lot of difference, and not just vaccines. But yet, we made vaccines better than anyone else. And we gave it to 99 countries when everyone else, the developed countries, were hoarding the vaccines. So when India's G20 presidency came, what were the three things that India was talking about? First, to create an era of inclusivity through the concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. This is the country which actually propagated the concept that the whole world is one family. Nobody else does. It has always been us versus them, us versus them. Communism versus capitalism. West versus the East. Developed versus developing. Nobody thinks about the whole world as one. When Sri Lanka collapsed, right? People were on the verge of getting into a civil war, when there were food riots. Where were these global NGOs, Western universities, their professors from Western universities? The big countries, which country came to help Sri Lanka?
India.
Well, India was saving itself and others also. Where was United States? Oh, US would have come, the West would have come if Sri Lanka had oil. Or if they had lithium ion. Now, wherever you have oil or lithium ion nowadays, they fight, they go to fight for democracy. Oh, you need a good leader to get, because democracy is in crisis. And then they would have a puppet government so that they can take it over. Is this the world we want? Can you imagine? Many of the crises in the last so many years, decades, is because of this is the way we were told how the world is running. You know, there's a movie called Rambo. You must have seen Sylvester Stallone. Even I'm almost old now, but when I was young, I really liked John Rambo movie. He went to Afghanistan, fought. I thought, oh, what a great savior he was. And then I realized when I grew up when I studied, John Rambo was a CIA guy who was training the Mujahids, who eventually became Lashkar-e-Toiba, who eventually became Jaish-e-Mohammed, who eventually became Al-Qaeda, and who were doing attacks all across the world. So John Rambo was training them. And we were told by Hollywood what a great thing John Rambo was doing. And we believed, oh, because Hollywood is saying, it must be a great thing. So this is the world we have been living, a world of hypocrisy. You know, 500,000 children in Iraq died because they put sanctions so that they cannot even import basic medicine needed for children. 5 lakh children died because of that. Forget about everything else. There's a country called Serbia. They bombed for 75 days to force the people to fight, protest against their president, Slobodan Milosevic. That they should force them, the president, to resign and stop the Kosovo war. For that, they bombed a city for 75 days, but that was okay because it was fight for democracy. But if Russia does it, then it's wrong. This is the double standard that Prime Minister always talks about, that we must move away from. And the multilateral institutions which were created to take care of the world, what are they doing? That is the fundamental question. And where is the conflict resolution mechanism, dispute resolution mechanism, that you prevent a conflict happening when a dispute arises? Is it working? So they were asking, okay, what is that you have? India says, yes, we have done it. When Article 370 was abrogated, Pakistan was threatening that we would go for a nuclear war, right? What happened? Nothing. Because we knew how to manage a conflict. Right? So even when we went into Balakot, did a air strike, used Spice 2000 armor-piercing bomb, killed hundreds of terrorists. We made it very clear. The government of India press statement made it very clear that we are not fighting a war against Pakistan. It is a preemptive non-military strike against terrorists, against non-state actors. Because that means we are just doing whatever was necessary, not to wage a war for the heck of it. But we don't see that happening in the rest of the world. $2.5 trillion was spent on Afghanistan. That is what the West says. Where has that money gone? Well, the money was not used to build infrastructure for Afghanistan, but the money was channelized back to some of the biggest military industrial companies of the West because they need the money to create new bombs. They funded. So this is the world we are living in. Every day, I remember during COVID time, there were these lobbies who were creating these articles saying that unless India takes Western vaccines, import, India is gone. But what happened? We actually emerged better. And this is where comes, is it just about peace building? So why am I saying this? Because tomorrow, how does it impact you? There's a Russia-Ukraine war. The edible oil price has gone up because of the Russia-Ukraine war. The price of coal has gone up. The price of oil has gone up. There is a huge premium on the disruptions and uncertainty. Today, if you go, probably even 6 months back, if you had gone to buy a car, the waiting periods had gone up from car to everything else. Why? Because the semiconductors were not coming. The semiconductors were simply not coming because of the challenges that are there within Taiwan and China. And Taiwan actually controls 66% of the global semiconductor supply chain. So how do you live in a world like this? We were told globalization is very good, where half your components are made by other countries who may be at war with you. We had a huge problem in the borders with one of our eastern neighbors, China. And yet, in spite of India being one of the biggest manufacturers of generic drugs in the world, the active pharma ingredients, which means the components which are used to make drugs, were coming from China. We were importing it. So how do you survive in that kind of a world? That was the question that India had to grapple with. So why is it that the Global South is so much interested in India today? India is giving solutions, and India is saying that I would become the voice of the voiceless nations who are not heard by anybody. Who cares about a Bangladesh? Who cares about a Somalia? Who cares about a Sudan? Who cares about a Sri Lanka? But these countries need to be respected equally, and that's what Prime Minister says. Respond, recognize, respect, reform. That you have to respect every country equally, their sovereignties equally, and you have to reform the institutions. I'll give you a very important example before, there is a lunch issue, I know. Look at the climate issue, right? And we are always told, please stop using coal. Coal is a big problem. West says, don't use coal. The West has used coal for 200 years, exploited it to the hilt. Today they control the price of oil. They jack up the price of oil anytime. A country like India, which has to take care of the aspiration of 140 crore people, how do we do without coal? Because that's the only resource we have. So you would have climate activists coming up. They're telling, no, you must protest against coal. A very practical question I'm asking all of you. Many of the NGOs, do you realize this? That when Europe sets up a nuclear power plant, there is no NGO protesting against them, but the same NGOs come to India to protest when India sets up a nuclear plant? Why does it happen? You need to then realize that not everything that happens from the West is the best thing. I'm not against the West, but the West needs to realize that the world is changing. We are today the 5th largest economy of the world, and still we are trying to be the voice of the voiceless nations. Why? Because we have gone through these phases, and we are still going. We have a lot of challenges. But since we have gone through those challenges, we are still facing the challenges, we know how to deal with it. We don't give sermons. A very important example I'm giving, and I will just take 5 more minutes. Number 1. The grid with which power is supplied? In Indian grid, 70% of the power supply happens from coal. Thermal power is the most stable for the grid. If you suddenly change coal with renewable energy, the grid will collapse. Which foreign expert will come and save India then. The grid will collapse. So what you do it in a calibrated manner, gradually. Secondly, renewable energy, electric vehicles. Now, there was this whole push from the West again, move towards electric vehicle at one go. The entire automobile industry of India is based on combustion engine. The whole ancillary industry which generates GDP, component of the GDP into hundreds of billions of dollars. Millions of people are employed over there. You suddenly change into renewable energy, the entire automobile industry will come down to a standstill. What happens to the disruptions in the society then? What happens to job creation? So you create a gradual process over a 10 year, 15 year, 20 year period time to make the transition in renewable energy, in electric vehicle, in everything that we are doing. We are doing better than the West, and we are doing in a more practical manner. Let me give you an example. Again, we do things which the West don't recognize, but it has far better impact. India changed all the sodium lights on the streets. You have seen they have been changed by LED lights. 36 crore has been changed. You know how much carbon footprint has been reduced? More than 3 crore ton every year. What is the saving? 19,000 crore. There are 80 million houses below poverty line who have been given free LPG connection. So they traditionally used to use wood for cooking purpose. It has been replaced by LPG. Imagine the carbon footprint reduction in terms of pollution. In West, even today, if you go, they don't have something called a Coven. They would give you a piece of paper as a certificate. So in India, the manner in which initially people thought, oh, India is a country of semi-literate people. How would they use digital apps, digital payment systems? How can you have a digital India? Today, the number of transactions that happen in India in a year, $1.5 trillion worth of transactions through digital medium is more than the combined number of transactions that happens in United States, France, Italy, UK. Every year, even samosa wala asks for a Paytm. So Paytm kar do. So there are fundamental changes that we have brought in, even while taking care of the environment. And please remember this. We don't have a Greta Thunberg shouting at the pitch of her voice, change the world or I will shout more. Today, you see what? The grassroots workers and social activists are being given Padma Shri awards. Those who have worked, there is somebody in northern Karnataka who had planted more than 2,000 banyan trees because she did not have children of her own. Those banyan trees were our child. There's a guy in Assam, Joydev Payne, he actually created a forest out of barren land, and there are so many of them doing it. And India is saying one thing. Prime Minister Modi's concept of lifestyle for environment. Your holistic lifestyle is very important, whether you want to take care of your health, your mental well-being, and the society. Traditionally, we don't need the West to tell us about environment. Every village, every household of ours, from childhood, remember your parents, your grandparents always told you to conserve things, not to waste. We never waste anything. We all had a garden, a small garden. We all knew how to plant a tree. Simple things. The simple things today are getting lost. So if you want to create a better society, if you cannot prevent the next pandemic from coming, but if you want to be more prepared for the next pandemic, improve your traditional lifestyle. India gave yoga to the world. India gave spirituality to the world. India actually pioneered the International Solar Alliance at the same time. India is spending money on National Green Hydrogen Mission. And again, those in the West who are saying you must go for renewable energy, the fact that India is moving towards national green hydrogen, which can completely do away with all kinds of requirement eventually for fossil fuel, you would see the West will create problem. Because if India becomes independent of its energy requirement from abroad, then it will be very difficult for them to control India. Lithium ion has been found in Kashmir, right? Suddenly you would see NGOs coming and talking about democracy in Kashmir. Because eventually, suddenly we have the 5th to 6th largest lithium reserve in the world today. So the West, fine, I have nothing against the West, but the kind of colonialism they had, the way they have controlled the world, the way they have controlled the narrative, today when we go to television every day, we are asking them these fundamental questions. You cannot have double standards on terrorism. You cannot say that that person is a terrorist, this person is a rebel. If terrorism is there, if it is terrorism, you cannot have good terrorists and bad terrorists. You cannot put sanctions like that and freeze the foreign exchange reserve of countries because they were holding the currency, the foreign exchange in dollar. There are countries whose foreign exchange reserves have been frozen. What happens tomorrow? And that's why India is moving towards what? Using rupee as a currency for international trade. The world is gradually changing and they're looking up to India to lead the way. Because, you know, we don't impose things on others. The 5G that India has worked upon, many countries are showing, interest. ISRO is launching so many satellites of foreign countries. You know why? Because we do not actually spy on them for using our technology. We don't tell them, wake up in the morning, look at that side, otherwise you're my enemy. We don't do that. So and when we say there is hope from India, that hope is from you. That hope is from you. And when we say hope is from you, it is gender neutral for both men and women, but the women have a bigger role to play because the very ethics, traditions, value systems that children learn first comes from the mother. So if your home becomes better, the country becomes better, the society becomes better. Today, India is being acknowledged not just for its defiant foreign policy. Remember, if we had not defied the Western sanctions and have taken oil from Russia, if we had not done that, we would have collapsed as an economy. And we must thank the government, the kind of work. When the COVID pandemic struck us, we were importing N95 mask and PPE kits, everything we were importing. In less than 3 months' time, India became the second largest manufacturer of N95 mask and PPE kits in the world. In less than 3 months' time. The enormous amount of work that was done to make sure that every person till the last mile gets the vaccine on time and there's a record that is maintained. Can you imagine the amount of work that the government has done? So these are the things you have to understand. The world is fundamentally altering and you need to find your place in that world. You need to adjust and then you need to lead the way for the rest. My last comment. When you talk about jobs, the dimensions of jobs are changing. It will no more be a 9-to-5 job. You may get a job that will start at 10 o'clock at night and end at 6 o'clock in the morning. Today, the gig economy is coming up. The gig economy where somebody giving a Swiggy delivery earns 30,000 a month. And somebody who is a graduate is finding it difficult to get a job. This is the reality. So how do you change yourself? 3 important fundamentals. Develop the capacity. Number 1, to be mobile. Go where the jobs are. The jobs will not come to you. Secondly, develop the tenacity and the temperament to work in an environment that is given to you. The office will not change for you. And third, learn to develop skills at every stage. Don't think my education is over, I will not anymore study. Disruptions will be the constant thing. And in this kind of disruption, the way India has emerged from a country which was on the verge of bankruptcy in 1990 to coming and becoming the 5th largest economy of the world in spite of so many disruptions. Remember, we are the only country in the world which was managing COVID and fighting the people who were alleged to be creator of COVID as well in the border. We were spending money on vaccines and military preparedness at the same time. And we did it. So the world looks up to us. The only thing we need to do is to take a little more pride in what we are doing. Our people are taking a little less pride, and that less pride is because lack of awareness of what we have achieved, the enormity of what we have achieved. United States printed $5 trillion note. $5 trillion of currency was printed during COVID time and distributed. Today they have 40-year high inflation. Their banks are collapsing. We did not print money and give to everybody. We gave free vaccines, fine. But we did not printed money and circulated. It would have created cataclysmic inflation. So we went through tough times, but we evolved and became far more resilient today than what we were before the COVID. Tough times will come. It will show your spirit. The world is looking up to us. We are looking up to you because you are tomorrow's policymakers, entrepreneurs, artists, creative mindsets. Thank you. Yeah.
First of all, good afternoon, everybody. I know it's lunchtime, but I have a little question. So like you said that you praised India in so many ways, that we've tried to become voice of the voiceless nations, and we are still doing it. And we often say that India is on the verge of becoming a world leader. But sir, it is evident that the West dominates us, they dictate us. What do you think are the internal reasons that are causing hindrance to us becoming a world leader? Because of course the other countries will try to dominate us because everybody wants to be a leader. There's no doubt in that. But what would be your view on saying that what are the internal reasons that are causing this hindrance? What are the reasons that we are not able to reach to the place we want to be?
Unfortunately, if you look, there are a lot of good things of US also. I'm not anti-US. One of the things that US has is that bipartisan consensus on certain issues. That these are the issues where political parties may have difference, but those are the issues, some issues, where they would agree on everything. Unfortunately, in India, electoral politics has, reduced itself to such level where certain political parties, for the sake of their own political interest, are preventing the kind of reforms which were very much required for greater job creation. You cannot create jobs, you cannot have employees without employers. If you start abusing employers or entrepreneurs, will it help India? We praise American industrialists and American entrepreneurs, but abuse Indian entrepreneurs. Will it help India? No. Western NGOs coming and telling us, oh, don't create that steel plant, don't create that cement plant. How would you create jobs if you don't have, factories? Agriculture reform is the most important priority of this country today. Farmers in this country cried on 2 days, the day when they had bumper crop, because bumper crop means prices will stop, prices will crash, or because when he doesn't have any, there's a crop failure because of rain or other thing. Market reforms in agriculture was not, it did not happen. And every major political party had it in their manifesto that they want agricultural reform. But because one political party is not in power, so they prevented it, allowed all kind of nefarious elements to come and create ruckus in the name of protesting against something which was desperately needed. Why do you think farmers commit suicide? Because there is lack of reform. And still we are not again allowing that reform to happen. So till the time we mature as a democracy, when I was in Singapore, I just want to say one thing. There are, certain issues of India I was against what the previous government was doing. But when I was in Singapore during my, MS, there were occasions I was asked about India, and I said, look, the internal issues of India I will not discuss abroad. When I am abroad, the Prime Minister of India is my Prime Minister. Political differences are different thing. We must stop abusing to earn some brownie points. And we must stop looking up to the West, that if West tells us good, we are good. That is something we should come out of. No, nothing against the West. Please remember, you are from a country which has probably a 10 to 15,000 year old civilization. We will take care of it and let them shout about democracy.